So here's a plan to keep our troops out of Iraq for good. Give all Iraqis a share of their country's huge oil reserves and profits, something, of course, the terrorists want to get their hands on. Hi, everybody. I'm David Aston. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Now, here's a question. If all decent Iraqis had a personal stake in this fight, would they step up and fight so that we wouldn't have to? Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Elizabeth McDonald, Rich Karlgaard, Sabrina Schaefer, and Rick Unger. So, Steve, is this a good idea?
Absolutely, David. Should have been done 10 years ago. You might call it the Alaska solution. They have a permanent fund in Alaska. A big chunk of the oil money goes there. And each year, every living person in Alaska who's a resident gets a dividend. Last year was $900, been as high as $2,000. And the Sunnis in Iraq don't have much oil on the territory they have, so they should be for it. This would get them buying in. The Kurds would like to have legal protections as well. So this is win-win all around.
And, Sabrina, this would be an equal share, whether you're Sunni, Shia, Kurd, whatever. It would bring Iraq together to a certain extent, wouldn't it?
Well, to a certain extent, but I also feel like we're talking about changing the living room wallpaper while the house is on fire. I don't know. I mean, I love the idea of this. Of course, anyone who believes in limited government and free market principles has to want the people of Iraq to feel culturally and economically connected to the country. The problem is there's the threat of ISIS. There's internal fighting between Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki and President Massoum. There's just so much going on. And then it's a country that fails to have some of the institutions that I think we take for granted here in the United States that helps people want to buy into that country.
Right. Well, this would, Rich, that's the point, is that we're trying to get the Iraqi people something to get them to buy into the country itself. By the way, Steve mentioned it should have been done 10 years ago. Coincidentally, 10 years ago, I had an interview with Milton Friedman, the late, great free market economist. Here's what he had to say. We had a great opportunity in Iraq. We should have established an oil company, sold all of the oil resources, take the capital, put it in a fund for the people of Iraq, very much like we did with the oil fund that they have in Alaska. So this idea has been around for a while. Is it time to implement it?
It's a great idea, but I think Sabrina is right that you've got to do this during peacetime. And right now the house is burning. And the first thing you have to do is boot ISIS out of the oil fields that it does control in northern Iraq. And you have to boot them out of the oil refining facilities they have in eastern Syria. This is really pressing. But I also think, you know, if you're going to get you pose the questions, will Iraqis stand up and fight if they have ownership? They have to have something to fight with, too, so why don't we give them a Second Amendment along with ownership in the oil fields? That ain't a bad idea.
That ain't a bad idea at all. But, Emac, even with all the fighting that's going on, Rich is right. It's right in the middle of a big conflict in that country. Still, they are getting $86 billion a year in revenue. $86 billion divided by 30-something million people is a lot of cash. They're only making $6,000 a year. That's the average income in Iraq. This could almost double the amount of money that they make.
Yeah, that's right, Steve. I say do it 20 years ago. You know, here's the thing. I'm totally with Steve Forbes on this. This is a beautifully elegant idea. Maybe if you empower the people, you could push back on people like ISIS. And basically what we're seeing is that we've got the brave, dedicated, courageous people of Iraq and the lower to middle classes shut out of the corridors of power and the power structure that is elitist and it is corrupt. So we see right now, David, look at this. We have a shale gas boom in the United States. Why? Private property rights.
Right.
That is the next step.
Right.
You have those property rights. You've got rights like this where Iraqis own their oil company. Wow, you could see dramatic change.
And Rick, there were a lot of mistakes made by us in Iraq. One of the big mistakes is thinking democracy is just voting for people. It's a lot more than that. It includes, as Emac says, property rights. This would establish some of that, would it not?
Listen, I'm going to give, and David, I think you were the one who brought the idea back up. I'm going to give major points for it. It's creative thinking for a solution to a big problem. I always respect that. I think it's great. My concern and skepticism is I'm not sure that even that amount of money that an Iraqi could hope to earn is going to overcome thousands of years of religious strife between Sunnis and Shias. And I know we'd all agree that ISIL is not going to care about this one little bit.
Well, Steve, we do still have power in Iraq. We had enough power to get rid of that prime minister, the Shia prime minister that was causing so much trouble. There's a new prime minister. So we could influence the government to do something like that if we really wanted to, couldn't we?
We could, and this was, I think, one of the failings of the Bush administration. This idea is kicking around, and for their own reasons decided not to do it. But with high technology today, it's become very, very practical. In countries like Egypt and India now, they're now giving aid to the poor by direct deposits in banking institutions and handheld devices and the like. So high tech makes this more feasible than ever before. And the way you get people to get behind an existing government is by having them feel they have a stake.
Right.
And this is a step in that direction.
Well, Sabrina, I want you to bring you on board in this, because I know you're a little reluctant on this. What if you add a different element to it? You say if you vote, if you register and vote and become an active voting participant in the country, then you get a share. Would that do it for you?
Well, I think what's making me reluctant is not the idea, because I think absolutely this is what we want. We want people to feel like they have a stake in this and that they want to fight for their country. What concerns me is that we're looking at this through a United States lens, where we have a constitution that's lasted more than 200 years, where we have a court system that's functioning, where we have even a bureaucracy that helps sort of administer a lot of things in this country. I worry that in a country that's under the kind of duress that Iraq is, that getting something like this off the ground, it would be tremendously difficult and perhaps take away from other needs at the moment. But again, I would love to see this actually happen. So maybe I'm short-sighted here.
Well,
but it's under duress is when you get big changes and break down barriers, and having people have direct property rights is how you start to get a prosperous economy, even under wartime conditions. And that's what brought about peace, shaky though it is, in Northern Ireland, was the great boom in the Republic of Ireland.
And Rich, there is a war going on inside there. ISIS is one of the nastiest, meanest terrorist organizations I've ever seen in my lifetime. That's saying quite a bit. If you give folks property rights, if you give them a stake in the country, something to fight for, might that not be something that would prevent our boots from being on the ground instead of theirs?
Yes, long term, I think that's right. And I just want to take on Sabrina a little bit here, though I admire her arguments. You know, nations can turn pretty fast. All you have to do is look at nations like Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam. I mean, these are countries that 30, 40 years ago, we would have said, you know, these problems are eternal. You know, this is just the way these people are. And look at how fast these countries turned when they got a taste of free market enterprise.
Go ahead, Sabrina.
Well, and I agree that, I mean, even if you look at South America, countries like Chile, where they have, you know, a privatized social security system, for instance, and that came as a result of not having that kind of path dependency and years of an existing government program. So I agree that there could be some opportunity here. I just was a little bit wary.
EMAC, think of a couple of other countries that we did battle with and we essentially destroyed, building up from the ground up. Japan and Germany after the war. Establishing property rights was one of the keys in getting those countries back in the ground. Granted, they didn't have a terrorist insurgency, but it did help to get those countries back.
Absolutely, 100%. And, you know, look at Russia. They don't have really property rights there, so that's why you have oligarchs and so much corruption.
That's a great point. That's why you have the problems.
But here's the thing. This move in Iraq would attack the root causes of terrorism, the divide between the corrupt elite and the poor. You know, you look at our back door. You look at Mexico. They're doing with Pemex, with distributing, you know, money back to the poor through their oil company.
Pemex is their oil company. Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I really want to pick up on something you said, David, because I really appreciate it. You pointed out that we played a role in getting the current prime minister in Iraq to step down finally, something that's very important. When we say we, this necessarily means the administration. So can I ask my friends for one time, and one time only, let's give the president some credit for this?
Yeah, okay. Although people have been talking about doing it for a long time. Frankly, some people say it's a day late and a dollar short. But still, at least we're on the right track. But here's something he could do that would take him one track further, perhaps even a bigger leap. Coming up next, paying almost $900,000 for something you could get.